Hello again from the Granite State. My name is Gary, and this is the Restoring Main Street podcast. And as always, I'd just like to thank you for joining me. Hope you've had a good couple of weeks. I know it's been a while since I've done a podcast. I apologize, or maybe you're okay with that. I don't know, but I'm hoping you're not. I'm hoping you've been waiting for some more content. But anyway, so got a little treat for you tonight. I'm not flying solo. Got a friend that I'm going to bring in. We're going to have just a general discussion about some of the things that are, going on today in the United States, some of the things that we're dealing with, and he'll be able to bring some true insight from another person's perspective. When I started this Restoring Main Street, the whole idea, I've got another microphone on the other side of the table. So I've from time to time, I've had people sitting across from me and done recordings like that. Over the last few months, not so much, but we do things over the internet as well now, as everybody knows. So we're working with some new technology tonight, too. I know normal people use Skype and Zoom. They're kind of owned by companies that, I'd rather not deal with. So the video and audio tonight that you're going to see with the split screen comes from the social media site Gab, and this is their new Gab voice. So it's in beta testing, and I've been messing around with it for a couple of weeks now, and it seems like it's going to be something decent, and it's independent of all the big names. As a lot of you probably know, Gab has their own servers and is totally separate, and we like that independence. I like that independence, so hopefully you can appreciate that. Guest tonight, I have a good friend that I paired up with or had associations with a couple of years ago. Locally here at the school, we had an issue at the high school, my alma mater. They were looking to change the name of the athletic teams. It has a Native American reference in the term of Red Raiders, and a few of us in town, alums and present students, got together to kind of fight the idea that they were going to change that or remove that name. And in that whole process, ended up reaching out to a few different entities. And my friend here, a little south of us down in Connecticut, Mark OneWolf, is one of the individuals that we got in touch with as a group. And he gave us a lot of support, help, and ideas, and we appreciated that. Mark was also, he worked with and was, I believe, he said on the board at one point for a couple of years with NAGA, which is Native American Guardians Association, excuse me. And so he's got a very unique and perspective on a lot of things. He also had a website or a Facebook page with another individual being a proponent of actually looking to keep Native American imagery, in the public eye and not remove it. He also, like I said, had a Facebook page which was based in Save the Name, the now Washington football team, but all of us know it's really the Redskins. He had quite a following with that, and for a long time was trying to champion that cause as well. So, like I said, we're going to discuss a few different things. Let me transition here with my slide intro, and then we'll bring Mark in. So, I wouldn't want you to miss the usual beginning of the program here. So let me do the transition. And there we go. And well, I think I've yacked enough already. Let me bring my friend Mark OneWolf in, and we'll kick this thing off. Hey, Mark.
Hey, hey, Gary. How's everything?
Yeah, it's good. I like I said, I was chatting it up a little bit there. I apologize for going so long, but anyway, I just wanted to give you, somewhat of a proper introduction so that people kind of had an idea of who you are and what our association was, and how we kind of became connected, seeing how we're a few hours away from each other. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, just one correction, not quite a correction, but
It's all right. Yeah.
um, so yeah, I still have when we're still doing the Native American Redskins fans group,
Oh, okay.
and we are repurposing the Save the Name group,
Gotcha.
and because while we believe, and this is completely off the subject that we had talked about earlier, but
Sure.
while we believe that the Washington Redskins retired and they are this new team, the Commanders or whatever it is,
Right.
is a sort of like an expansion team or a new team.
Yeah.
We would love to see the Redskins return at some point because although it seems very unlikely, um, you know, that's definitely something that we were pushing for because we've seen it happen on smaller scales, like in Killingly, Connecticut, where they had retired the Redmen name and then they voted to reinstate, and in several other places around the country, and so um, we're looking at different avenues. Right now, the climate in Washington D.C. is not ripe
Right.
for such a move, but we're going to stay on our toes and keep pressing the issue. I mean, still um, work with Naga in other situations, and with on the like I said on the more regional level with the high schools and and different things like that. So when we get to be when we get I guess a stronger backing and more consistent understanding, because people are seeing now the manipulation that the media has done, and the lies are coming out, where people thought that the Redskins name was offensive to Native Americans. Now they're realizing what we've been trying to convey all along, is that the media is lying to you, and this is just nothing but a propaganda campaign
Right.
to cancel the Native American in the public eye.
Yeah.
So we can see that with the retirement of the Washington Redskins, they have since gone on to try to erase the history of the team by rewriting it, basically, where Joe Theismann played for the Washington Redskins. They have him listed as playing for the Washington Commanders, and different people have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and they're saying like, oh, they played for the Commanders, but they never ever played for the Commanders. They played for the Redskins.
Right.
So they're trying to do what is referred to as the paper genocide, and erase not only um, cancel the team, but also erase the history and the legacy that was attached to it. But
Yeah.
I digress with that.
No. I honestly, part of my reason for bringing that up was that I wanted people to realize that you're not unfamiliar with being in the public eye and taking a stance on things that you believe in. That's kind of the common ground that both you and I share, and so, and I mean, what you're talking about is just very much part of the culture war battle that a lot of us wish that some of our representation in Washington that is supposedly supposed to be there standing up for those things would take a hold of it and take a stance, kind of like what we've seen Ron DeSantis do down in Florida. He hasn't been afraid to address anything as far as culture goes. I mean, when you basically go after Disney when they start playing games, I think that pretty much lays out the battlefield, or the how Florida or at least Governor DeSantis and how he's going to govern down there. It pretty makes things pretty plain. So part of the culture war is part of the problem. So that's part of the reason I wanted to just bring up a little bit of your background anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's relevant to what we discussed today as well, because it's just merely one subject in a long, they almost have like a recipe, if you will, for getting things done, and basically manipulating the public into thinking a certain way by altering stories. And a lot of people that, I've been screaming about this ever since I was 17 years old, with when CNN was on my ship. I was in the Navy,
Right.
and CNN was on my ship. Now, I swore by CNN up to that point because they were the ones who brought all the information about the Gulf War, and because I had signed up with the early what do you call a delayed entry program. I was very concerned, or not concerned necessarily, but very interested in what was happening in the Gulf War. So of course I was, I had Washington Post and CNN. I mean, I'm like got my face plastered in this all the time.
Yeah.
So that was where I got my main source of information at the time.
Right.
It wasn't, I didn't have my eyes opened until I was actually a part of one of their stories, where they were on the ship. We were in Operation Restore Hope. We're attending to Operation Restore Hope, my battle group, and CNN was embedded with us. And so, well, they had a crew embedded on our ship. Now there's 6,000 people on the ship, and generally speaking, a cruise will last 6 months.
Right.
It could be a little bit longer, depending on what comes about. But generally speaking, our deployments are 6 months. Now, when we left port, you count 6 months out.
Yeah.
That's when we're supposed to come back home.
Right.
Now, if you leave, if you leave port in, let's say, September, and you got October, November, December, January, February, March, you're not getting home until either March or April.
Right.
Which, all the major holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, all the major holidays are all in that time frame. So before we even set foot on the ship, we knew we were going to miss Christmas. We were
Right.
going to have Christmas on the ship. Well, CNN decided to have like one of these, their little opinion pieces or whatever. They were talking, asking questions. Now, I happen to be one of the youngest people, one of the youngest crew members on the ship. And someone had pointed out, we were at Chow eating, and somebody said, "Hey, look, why don't you ask this guy? This is his first cruise. He's a we call them pollywogs or whatever. We were like, we're like, still wet behind the ears kind of thing." And so
Sure.
I guess they felt like, like, oh wow, we're gonna get some really good stuff from this kid. So they come and sit down with me, and they start asking me questions. Now, they didn't realize who they were sitting down with, because I, come from a long line of military service in my family and stuff like that. So, again, I was in a delayed entry program. My parents had to sign a waiver to get, so I could sign up. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and this was during the Desert Shield and Desert Storm and everything like that. So like the chances of me getting out of my schools and out of boot camp and out of my schools and end up having to go to a combat zone was very high.
Right.
So I was, like I said, it was, for me, it was always an honor and a pleasure to serve my country, and that was what I was concerned about and what I was thinking about. Well, of course, I gave the I guess the boilerplate answer to their questions. They didn't like it.
Right.
And when their article finally came out, it talked more about the people who were disgruntled and people who were angry. It's like, oh, I only signed up to go in the Navy to get college, get money for college, and now they got me over here in the war zone or whatever. Those are the voices that we mostly heard from.
Right.
And so I said, I gave a really good interview. I thought I would be one of the people. And they said, nope, not even close. So that I didn't make the cut. And then, of course, after the article came out, the captain of the ship was kind of ticked off about how the crew was portrayed, and he says, "Look, nobody talks to the media." And then,
Right.
of course, the next article came out that the captain was trying to censor the free press. So,
Right. Well, it just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it just shows that they they walk in with a narrative or an idea of what they really want to portray, and you could like you suggested, you can sit down with several different people, but if they already know what slant they want to share with the public, then then that's what you get. I mean, it kind of, like I said, rolls right into some of the stuff we want to cover tonight. When Mark and I were kind of having a little bit of a text discussion on what to maybe discuss and go over. A lot of it had to do with just from Joe Biden's speech in Pennsylvania yesterday, and the narrative that that they want to create, surrounding firearms and the supposed crazy right wing agenda out there that thinks they need to own those weapons of war. So, Mark, it's probably be a good time, if you don't mind, if you bear with me for just a second. I want to play just a clip from his speech.
Sure.
So, and that way we can kind of take a look at this and glean from it what you will. Make sure that hit the screen. It did. Okay. Take a listen, folks.
Right now, you can't go out and buy an automatic weapon. You can't go out and buy a cannon. And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale that's used to provide this, and who they shooting at. Shooting at these guys behind me. Right now, you can't go out.
So there you go. That's just a little bit of a clip as far as what was going on there, and that kind of spells things out. And the question that I had kind of introduced to Mark.
It was really unbelievable that he would do that.
Okay.
And, the thing is we've got so much support in Florida.
Let me get rid of that. Sorry. Decided to start playing on its own, so I can appreciate the extra, but that's kind of not where I wanted to go there. Sorry about that, folks. But like I started to say, they pick and choose their agenda and what it is that they're trying to feed to the basic public. And my question to Mark, or the part of the reason that I was discussing some of these things is do you see, or do you feel like I do, that it seems like between the administration and the media, it's almost like they're trying to bait the American public, or those of us that are willing to stand up and speak, into something more than just a verbal, back and forth. Almost like they're trying to taunt us into doing something that they could use to escalate, their response to those things. And so I had posed that question to Mark.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think I've been watching our country get further divided. It's literally like mincemeat now. I how you get those little notifications on Facebook where you have like a post that you might have posted 10 or 15 years ago or something like that, and it'll come back up.
Sure.
And I saw a post that I posted about House divided. I took this picture of the U.S. Capitol, and it was basically I took a picture of the U.S. Capitol, a long exposure, and so it ends up being like two U.S. Capitols, like two images
Right.
of the U.S. Capitol, and I quoted the House divided against itself shall not stand, from Abraham Lincoln, and this was during Obama's administration, so it's about 10 or 12 years ago, I guess now, that came out. But I had seen this country, you see different things over the years. I'm a few years shy of 50 at this point. So in my years, I've watched the country ebb and flow. fight about certain things and we become unified, and we fight about certain things, become unified.
Right.
This is the longest stint of 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 division that I have seen in my life, and it seems like the people in power, these politicians or whatever, aren't doing anything. And although Biden ran on the whole premise that he was going to be, he's going to be the what do you call it, the unifier in chief,
Right.
he has done nothing to make good on that promise, and he's done more to further divide this country. I started seeing this more prevalent during the Obama administration.
Right.
That's when I started seeing more, instead of just like kind of like seeing fracturing of our public, and then where there were opportunities for Obama, for example. This is, I'll mention this about the Trayvon Martin case. There was opportunities for Obama to step up and and unify us, but he stoked the fires of racism even further, making the whole Trayvon Martin issue about race, and it never was.
Right.
Now, some people will argue with me or whatever just because, but you're talking about a Latino guy, and a black guy get into an altercation.
Right.
Who started it? Why it was started is irrelevant. The fact is that there was mutual combat, as per eyewitnesses,
Right.
as per forensic evidence. All the forensic evidence and the eyewitnesses and everything corroborated that there was mutual combat, and then there was no premeditation or anything like that. And, this Florida stand your ground law or whatever like that. He had the absolute right to defend himself. George Zimmerman.
Yeah.
And that was how the case was found, and it was the verdict and everything like that was read. He had everything went through the system and everything like it's supposed to.
Right.
Now, what Obama could have done at that time as the president,
Yes.
he could have said, "Look, I understand, this is a highly polarizing, situation or whatever like that, and we've gotten all the facts. This jury of his peers were, whatever, they found him not guilty or whatever. Let's move on with our lives, and
Right.
let's see what we can do in the future to try and perhaps prevent this type of tragedy, because nonetheless, it was a tragedy." I don't believe that anyone should lose their life over something as trivial as trespassing or whatever it was that Zimmerman thought was going on at that time or whatever.
Right.
But of course we didn't see that. Of course we saw, this is how he is. I'm a black man and blah blah blah. And he's like further stoking the fires of division and saying, the system is fixed. And people start, of course, believing more in that and saying, "Oh, well, this is systemic racism, and this is all this kind of, and this is what this was a result of."
Right.
And so we, you fast forward to the Kyle Rittenhouse case, last year, when the verdict was read. Again, you have your politicians, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and everything, where they could say, "Hey, look, given all the facts and all the video, I mean, there was indisputable facts and video and everything. This was probably the most, heavily, surveilled, incident. I mean, I think there's more video angles of Kyle Rittenhouse and what happened there than the January 6th thing."
Yeah, with cell phones and everything. I mean, people were just recording all. And honestly, thank God that was the case. Because it was much easier for the defense to make its case. It had the video evidence to share all these things, to corroborate the fact of what Kyle was saying all along. And without that, who knows what direction it could have been pulled in. But obviously it's one of those things where truly, thank God that was the case, that they had plenty of video evidence about
Right.
how this all went
Not from
down.
a lack of trying, though. I mean, they tried everything, every little trick in the book to try and make it so that it wasn't self-defense or whatever. So um, you know again, the president, the commander in chief, um, you know, needed to be there to unify us and say, hey, look, this. Hold on just a minute. Can you? Who's knocking? I'm busy. I I sent you a text message. Go ahead, man. Sorry about that.
You're good. Hey, this is what happens with a live.
It always happens. I'm sitting there,
Yeah,
he can hear me. He hear me speaking, but of course he's gonna knock.
Yeah.
But again, there was an opportunity for Biden and Harris, for our administration, to shore up that division that had created. I mean, there was a huge polarizing incident,
Sure.
even though it had nothing to do with race. Because Kyle Rittenhouse was white, and the three people that he shot were white, and then of course there were people who tried to make it about like this is a racist kid and this, that, and the other, and all kinds of misinformation going through there that nobody really went after because it was left-wing misinformation.
Yeah.
And they were saying that this was a disappointing verdict, and this is the way the system works, and so they put further doubt in there. And then going back to that same summer where you had the Black Lives Matter protests, and the various incidents that happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and things like that, and how our politicians, the people who are supposed to be in charge, especially the left-wing people, were sowing more doubt into or distrust into our law enforcement and basically undermining that whole system.
Yeah.
And so that goes to what you were saying, with this rhetoric about F-15s, and it's just further yet another example of this administration, especially, or the Democrats in general, because it's like I said, this all started, not all started, but it was more prevalent during the Obama years, where Biden was again in office at that time as well, to divide and sow these seeds of doubts and everything like that, but not just against our law enforcement, not just against our justice system, but also against our fellow Americans, because we're the ones that are the patriots, like what do you say, the right wingers or whatever you want to call us.
It's kind of a backhanded comment, just trying to make us somehow look radical. May I say, could I say radical instead of having the same train of thought that somehow that they've got the right view on things, and for some reason like I said, the idea that that an armed citizenship could actually repel an army. I think they, as much as I hate to bring this up because the evacuation was an absolute disaster, I think they forget about Afghanistan and the history of Afghanistan. Never mind our war there or the time we spent there, but there's been many a nation that has gone into that country and it basically has been repelled, and basically it's guerrilla warfare type things. So the idea that an armed citizenry couldn't at least stand up and fight for freedom is kind of a ridiculous premise.
But isn't that what our country's history was founded on in the first place? I mean,
yes, we didn't stand in the field. We
were, it was colonists versus the
greatest army in the in the history of
empire.
The British Empire. What was the comment?
No more David and Goliath than that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. And they tried to shame us into doing something different, or having different tactics as well. Talking about us hiding behind trees, and we're not going to be crazy enough to just stand out in middle of a field, line up like all of you did, and take shots at each other, and then after we've picked up our dead, stop for tea for a few minutes, and then come up and line up again, and do the same thing. No, the American patriots, our founding fathers, realized that we're fighting a much superior force here, so we're going to use whatever tactics is necessary to try to come out with a win here. So
right, and they learned that from a lot of what they learned in guerrilla warfare was from Native Americans. So
yeah, well, there you go. So like I said, all of this, it just seems like to me that they're attempting to harass or stir up the American public. With how upset everyone is, after this last presidential election, and you can say there was issues there or not, but people are still not happy with that. They still have, some strong feelings about how all of that went down. And then you continue to, like you said, instead of like he campaigned on, wanting to be, the calming force, the middle of the road lunchbox Joe, he comes in and starts to basically continue to stir up the American public and continue to divide us. And you know what? All of us that understand that, we realize that, this is a recipe. This, you're not really hiding anything from all of us. Any of us that have our eyes open, and ears to hear, we understand what it is you're trying to do. The only thing that really scares me is if it gets to the point where you have what Glenn Beck talks about as the Bubba effect. And what the Bubba effect is basically
do tell.
Yes, it's basically the suggestion that the average everyday person, after being basically maligned and persecuted and just continually badgered, by politicians and legislation and bureaucracy upon bureaucracy, at some point decides that, this is not how our country was founded. We're supposed to have free speech. We're supposed to have the ability to just go out and live our lives as long as we're not breaking the law. So at some point, the Bubba effect says that the common man gets tired of that, and he decides to lash out, in a physical fashion. And to me, all of what's being ginned up right now is an effort to bring that to fruition. And I have to believe it's because this administration has an agenda and things that they want to do, but they want the excuse to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's like the dare I say the January 6th protests.
Yes.
That they knew that there was a protest. They used that to get what they wanted, and so you get a few outside agitators into a crowd.
Yes.
To create this mob mentality, and then you get a few bad actors to act out, which by and large, if you look at how many people were there versus how many people they actually arrested, and for various crimes and things like that, it was a fraction.
Yes.
A fraction of those who were there. By and large, and not to be to coin their phrase, the protest was mostly peaceful.
Yeah.
But of course, you get a few people. You get the FBI. They were embedded with some of these people.
Right.
They had, or at least some of their informants, I should say. I don't know particularly if the FBI themselves were there, but they had informants in some of these groups suggesting these things. And it was almost like, was there a governor, the one governor that was supposedly getting abducted or whatever?
Oh, yes,
that
yes.
was actually an FBI, we call it a idea that was hatched by the undercover agent.
He was in with this militia group up there, and basically Governor Whitmer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Governor Whitmer, and it was, and it came out into the public, that the FBI agents were actually making these suggestions to them. They may have been, no more than a bunch of blowhards that never got around to doing anything, but it seems as though now that more evidence has come out that they were kind of pushed and almost coerced into, deciding to make some type of an attempt at this. There's certainly a certain amount of doubt that can be sown here that, that they may have, just been, bloviating the whole time and never actually, did anything. It's kind of like when you mentioned January 6th, when you go back to some of the videos, and this has come out after, a lengthy amount of time, that you see officers or, the Washington, Capitol Police actually, opening doors and allowing them in, inviting.
Right, and even escorting them around. I mean, there was a video where there's a two Capitol Police officers escorting them around, and then there was some of the guys sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair in the main, what do you call it? Like I guess the main hall or whatever.
Sure.
And he says, "Hey guys, don't do that. Get out of there." He was like saying stuff like that.
Right.
They weren't doing anything. They were just being acting like jerks or whatever. But
sure.
But it seemed to me they were on a guided tour.
Right.
I mean, it didn't seem to be in any conflict with the officers other than the guy telling them to get down out of the chair or whatever like that, or something like that. That was it. And so there's more questions than answers to January 6th. Like I said, I have my theory on what happened there. What's more likely than not
sure.
was that there were these protesters. These people who came to listen to Trump speak, because he can garner a pretty big crowd anytime anytime he speaks out.
Sure.
We were not satisfied, and I'll admit that I was not satisfied with the results of the election. I thought that there was something fishy. I still think that there was something fishy. I don't believe that the numbers add up just because what they're saying is, Trump gets X amount of votes, Biden gets X amount of votes, and just his and Biden's votes combined are more than what they're saying participated. They're saying there was 64% participation of registered voters, and you look at how many registered voters there are,
right?
And if there's 168 million registered voters, and you take 64% of 168 million, it doesn't add up to
right.
115, whatever, however many votes there was just between Trump and Biden,
right?
Knowing that there was another 2% of voters that had voted for other people like Kanye West and Mickey Mouse and
sure, yeah.
So the numbers don't add up.
No, and we're being led to believe that he, by just virtue of the total of vote, that he was the most popular president in I don't know how many years, even more popular than his partner Obama, years ago. And he spent the last part of the whole campaign really, campaigning from the basement, almost like what you saw Hillary do in 2016. Just on the surface alone, there's reasonable doubt that can be suggested.
Absolutely. I mean, I maybe I give my fellow Americans a little too much credit, but I just don't believe that 81 million people are that stupid. Maybe 41 million people.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that. If you think about it, Biden was never a front runner in any of the. How many times did he run for president? And he never got the nomination.
Right.
Kamala Harris was the first one to get eliminated, so she wasn't popular amongst her own party.
No.
So you put two of the most unpopular people of the party, and you say, well, look, is this the best that the Democrats have to offer? This is the Democrats' cream of the crop. You get a senile, dementia patient and someone who just can't stop giggling about everything,
right,
and has no substance.
Right.
And then you mean that we shouldn't question that? Come on. That's I think that we should be allowed to question everything, anything.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that we are being shushed and told not to question it makes me want to question even further.
Exactly. I mean, that in itself is just human nature, as far as that goes. I mean, and like I said, that's kind of why I brought up this question, to Mark, and we, wanted to actually discuss it. I feel like, and like I said, this is a lot of this. I'll make the statement as far as material being out there in the public, and you can certainly go find these things. Everybody can knows how to surf the internet, but my opinion at this point, based on what I'm seeing, and the continued direction of division or trying to divide us. Every time you turn around, they're trying to divide us one way or the other, by race, by color, by opinion, by supposedly the mob mentality and all the crazy right-wingers. To me, they're trying to provoke a physical action. They're trying to provoke and actually get to execute the Bubba effect, like I talked about. The general population finally saying, what, I've had enough. You're taxing me into oblivion. You have a war on fossil fuels that you talked about during the primaries, and you are obviously working to fulfill that goal of the World Economic Forum, to be zero carbon, by 2050. But they want in this country to be zero carbon by 2030. So you're getting me with gas prices, you're getting me with food prices, because everything is related to gas and the not only gasoline and diesel, but all the from the waste products of that process, all the things that are made from that, and then you throw in
polyester,
exactly,
water bottles, everything.
Yeah,
everything.
And then you toss on top of that, a pandemic that could have been handled differently. Granted, the first few weeks of things where we really didn't know what was going on, okay, maybe fair to consider a lockdown, but I fully believe, and there's more and more material coming out right now that basically will let you know, after they've drilled down and exposed all of this, material that they wanted to hide for 75 years, by the way, but they said no, we're not going to let you do that. You're going to see the actual people that contracted and died from COVID compared to the actual amount of people that had COVID and died of something else and were registered as dying from COVID is going to be absolutely very telling. But all of that just culminates into, a couple of years of basically trying to beat down the American public to the point where they want the general public, who is normally, will protest peacefully. They want them to act out. And like I said, this is my opinion, because they want to be able to initiate broad sweeping responses to that you would not see under normal circumstances. And like I said, that's my opinion, and that's just my read on things. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. We can tell. I'll give you a good example of this power grab is what it boils down to. If they can create a state of emergency, then they can get their basically their war powers. Right. Like they used for the pandemic.
Yes.
They got power. It basically similar to this state of emergency or whatever, which gives the executive office more power, right?
Yeah.
And so the way you really gauge that is like, okay, well, they created a problem that really wasn't there at first, because you have Democratic senators and Congress people or whatever like that, basically stating that Trump was overreacting initially,
right?
Because he wanted to shut down travel to China and all this other kind of stuff, right? Then he wasn't doing enough, and he was denying this or whatever. And I said, but wait, you guys were saying that he was overreacting, so how is he denying something that he's overreacting to? And
Right.
But these are the questions that that people I sort of forget. I mean, their memories are short, but what they wanted to do is create a problem, and then what they get out of it is they get more power out of it.
Yes.
So then they can do these mandates, they can do whatever, they can control the economy. And then if you notice, what they said was, we're going to shut down the economy. They didn't say we want people to stay indoors and be safe and whatever. They said stay home, stay safe, and they kind of were programming us with billboard signs on the
freeways,
on the road, as well as commercials and constant programming on that. But their biggest mistake for me was to then mention shutting down the economy,
right?
Because several months before, all the pundits were talking about, well, you have an incumbent with a good economy. He's going to be hard to unseat. Pretty much we're just going to have to deal with Trump for 4 more years.
Right.
And then along comes the pandemic, and they're like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And so, which makes me feel that some of it may have been out of the abundance of caution, but some of it was also to accomplish what ended up happening, was tanking the economy, blaming everything on Trump, blaming all the deaths on him or whatever like that, and getting him unseated, basically removing the confidence in the people, or the people had in the administration.
Right.
And then having the Democrats having the executive branch as well as the legislative branch, they have control of that, and then in the last couple of years showing that none of this had anything to do with Trump, because even with a vaccine and everything like that, more people have died. According to their numbers, more people have died from COVID, and they haven't really gotten a handle on it or whatever like that. And now you have the CDC saying, "Oh, well, we dropped the ball."
Yeah.
So basically, all the truth is coming out. And if you can believe that these people are maintaining this power, and they're capable of inflicting struggles and turmoil on the U.S. people for their own purposes.
Right.
If you can believe that, and we have plenty of evidence to show that this is the case, and
Right.
even by their own words saying that gas prices are high because of their transitional plan.
Right.
Because they want to push their Green New Deal. So, this is part of the transition, as they said. This is their own words. So this is not something that just kind of, came up at the last. So of course they're trying to make climate change a crisis.
Right.
Right. And now with the, I know we started talking about the gun control and everything, but they're also, they're poised to try to make that a crisis as well.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at some stats on mass shootings and stuff like that. Now, mass shootings, when I say mass shooting, what is the idea of a mass shooting? What idea does that come into your head for a mass shooting?
Well, usually these are in public places, and a lot of times, the one thing that stands out to me, being somebody that believes in being able to protect yourself, is they're usually a lot of times in gun-free zones, and you've got basically an individual with the idea that they're going into a public place and they're looking for attention. They're going to make a spectacle of themselves, and they're going to shoot up a lot of people. You're not talking about one or two. You're talking about, the idea is maximum impact for whatever reason they're doing it, whatever attention they're looking to draw to themselves. But when I think of mass shootings, that's kind of the scenario that I picture in my head.
Right, and that's done on purpose, because that's exactly what the vast majority of Americans would think. They're thinking of a lone gunman, some kind of disgruntled, person or whatever that, is, off their rocker or whatever, and then they go into a place where people are largely unarmed, and they just want to kill the maximum amount of people that they want. So this has nothing to do with gang violence or mutual combat or any kind of altercation that might have arisen or something like that.
Right.
However, if you look up the statistics, that most mainstream media, especially left-wing media, will put out there, their definition of a mass shooting is any gun, any violence that occurs where more than 4 people are injured by gunfire.
Right.
So of course that's why in 2022 they said that there's been 417 mass shootings. Yet if you look on, I forgot which website it was now, but if, there's a statistic website about mass shootings, and they list all the ones like the Pulse nightclub, Las Vegas, Parkland, Sandy Hook, all those all those particular shootings have something in common, just like you described. Generally a lone gunman, except for like in Columbine where there was two gunmen.
Right.
But generally a lone gunman or somebody that was trying to, like you said, in the gun-free zone, trying to inflict maximum damage and make a name for themselves, or whatever motives they have, but no gang violence or anything like that. There's only been 125 or 126 in the last 20 years.
Right.
Those type, the ones that we think about, the when we say a mass shooting,
right,
or rampage shooting or something like that, this is what comes to our mind. Not gang violence, not 2 people who got angry in front of 7-Eleven and shot and end up shooting other people, or
fighting over
like
a Slurpee. Yeah.
Right. And so, but they convolute those statistics so as to create a crisis.
Right.
And so we have in January, let's say, this is their own numbers, and this is including every type of, just their again, their statistic is where more than 4 people have been injured, not necessarily killed, but injured by gunfire. So in January there was 34, February was 36, March was 42, April was 57, May 64, June 66, July 89, and then August is 29. Now keep in mind, and this is, again, there's a theory of mine.
Right.
These mass shootings tend to happen in clusters or whatever like that, where we where they're just put out to us in the media, one after the other to create this sense of urgency. Something's got to be done. I mean, of course, you hear everybody saying that all across the internet. Something's got to be done. Something's got to be done.
Right.
So they managed to pass 2 gun control bills after the Uvalde shooting in, I think that was in May, the end of May, I think it was. So since then, they were able to pass 2. One was the red flag law, and then this latest one was the red flag law actually became a law, but the assault weapons ban is still awaiting for the Senate,
right,
to take it up. But it passed the House. And then suddenly, this was in July, but suddenly now we don't have any, we've gone from 89 mass shootings in month of July, 66 in the month of June, 64 in the month of May, down to 29 in the month of August.
Yeah.
So, and what's today, August 31st, right?
It is. So it's served.
They've gotten done what they want it done, and now
it served its purpose.
It served its purpose. Now, do I think that they hire people to go around shooting up schools and stuff like that? No. What I think happens, and this is evident in Highland Park, it's evident in Buffalo, it's evident in Uvalde, also evident in Tulsa. I mean, like the last several major true
mass shooting events.
Mass shootings. You had people who were already on the radar of the police. The guy in Highland Park had threatened to kill his parents. They confiscated all of his knives and swords and guns and knives and swords in there. But then they allowed the guy to buy a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he bought these things legally. So up until a few years ago, most of these mass shootings or whatever, like for example Sandy Hook, that guy did not have he took his mother, he shot his mother, killed his mother, and took her gun
Right.
and came and shot up the school. And so of course it was illegal. So most of the shootings were illegally possessed guns. Now they make a point that these are legally purchased firearms or whatever like that. So all these people were under the age of 21 or whatever. So of course they want to limit the age of gun possession or gun purchasing or whatever like that.
Right.
Now in Uvalde, for example, again he was already on the radar. He was already under scrutiny from the police for several other things, including some sort of mental illness issues or whatever like that. But in Texas, if you buy more than one gun at any one given point, then it automatically throws up forces an investigation. So the cops are supposed to contact you and find out. It's like, oh, you bought you're buying two guns. What's going on? Whatever. They're supposed to do it. They did not do that in this case.
Right.
Then he buys the two guns or whatever like that. Who knows how he could afford those two guns? But that's a different story. Because he's supposed to be a high school dropout and he wasn't gainfully employed, but yet he was able to buy. Within a couple of weeks of his birthday, mind you, he was able to buy nearly $8,000 worth of firearms and ammunition. So
yeah, that seems rather peculiar. Yeah, I can't even spit out the word. There's some questions there, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, Highland Park, Uvalde, Buffalo, Tulsa, all these cases, they were not just random people that just kind of popped up out of nowhere. They already had scrutiny. They were already under scrutiny. They were allowed to purchase these firearms. And so I think in the Buffalo, I think it was Buffalo or maybe it was Highland Park. So there's a sunset clause. This is to prevent the government from, like if you're supposed to be able to go get an instant background check. So the National Instant Background Check, it's called the NICS system or whatever. You're supposed to be able to do that, and then if any flags pop up or whatever, you get a temporary denial, and then they're supposed to do a little further investigation or whatever. But they're not supposed to hold up your purchase any more than 72 hours.
Right.
If it goes beyond 72 hours, then you get an automatic approval, right? And that's what happened in at least two of these cases. I can't remember for sure if it was, which ones it was. I think Buffalo was one.
So Buffalo,
sure.
that sounds like a familiar piece of information related to Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo was one for sure, and I believe Highland Park might have been the other one, or Tulsa might have been the other one, but
right.
I'm not sure. But anyway, it sunsetted, and then he was able to get his firearms. This is a failure of there's already laws on the books. This is obviously a failure of the system, and this is what we're seeing as a failure of the system. Yet they want to blame it on us right wingers or whatever like that. So they want to impose more gun control. If the police are unable to enforce the laws that are already on the books, you're going to create more laws, and now they got to enforce these laws as well. I think it's very suspicious that in these particular cases that certain things were kind of slipped under the cracks. I don't believe in. I think I might have mentioned to you this before. I don't believe in coincidences beyond three. Well, I should say beyond two. So two coincidence, one coincidence. I'm like, okay, this guy in Uvalde, maybe something fell through the cracks, and he was able, he bought two guns. He had some other issues, prior, and they took his knives and all this other, or I mean, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting Highland Park mixed in there, but I would say he also had some kind of domestic issues or whatever. but anyway, um, I can believe one incident of something falling through the cracks.
Right.
Two is a little iffy, but you get one, two, three, four, at least four, because they didn't mention the one in Indiana too much, because that one was, ended by a good Samaritan, which didn't fit their narrative, so they kind of swept that one under the rug.
Right. No, it's like I said, it's all of this. Like I said, I just see a way as a way, it's like I said, of ginning up the masses to do something. They want to see good people in the streets, because it gives them the means and the ability, like you said, to declare an emergency. I believe part of what you've seen, threatened by this administration, by Biden talking about, declaring an emergency, comes from special privileges, given to the executive branch. And I think it was laid out either around the end of World War II or something of that nature. And I think most of the American public would be absolutely horrified, if they knew what kind of sweeping actions can be taken by the executive branch and our government if they just turn around and declare something, a national emergency. You would be horrified. You'd be scared. You talk about, totalitarian, talk about a lockdown, talk about, rolling into, a fascist state where, you don't get to twitch, a la 1984 without, the government knowing every single move you make. I think, honestly, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for an excuse. They're looking for an event to be able to do this under the guise of, keeping the American public safe. These crazies are getting out of hand. I mean, that's why you see them, labeling people that are willing to speak out. And chances are you and I, as well, we're probably on some type of a list right now.
I'm sure I'm on a few lists.
Yes, as being
just having this on my shoulder is, I'm already on the list.
Sure. And we're basically domestic terrorists. Along with parents going to school board meetings, standing up for their kids' rights and the crap they're being taught in the school systems, via the teachers association's agenda on public schools. We're all being labeled terrorists, for the same reason January 6th, like I said, the way that all played out, they wanted something to be able to create a narrative to frame good American citizens that just want to be able to speak their opinions and stand up against what is there, that's being perpetrated upon them. They want to be able to label them. They want to be able to, like I said, issue special orders where, the idea of, you and I will be sharing time in some re-education camp at some point in time, possibly, Mark, because, we have an opposing opinion to some of this. I think, honestly, I think that's the atmosphere and that they want to create. They want an event, they want an excuse, and that's why they keep basically poking the public, at the same time you're feeling, the financial squeeze that is driving, everybody, just crazy.
Right. I mean, I'm seeing a lot more altercations. I live in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is probably one of the more peaceful places in all of the country, right? But I've noticed since the pandemic, since the lockdowns and everything like that, I've noticed how people are becoming more agitated. I've also noticed a lot more incidents of road rage. I don't know if you've noticed that as well, but I've noticed a lot more incidents of road rage. I've noticed a lot more people have a lower tolerance for things, and I see people getting in altercations. I mean, not just here, but all around the country. I mean, you see people getting in a few years ago, it's like, hey, my fries are cold. Can I get some more? Oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Right.
Now it's like, they're throwing food and stuff like that. But that's not the only thing. We have, like, again, we can go down a whole list, but then you undermine the public trust in law enforcement, and then you unleash the criminals on the public.
Right.
And so we have where where I don't feel safe, for me and my family as I used to.
Right.
And and keep in mind, like, with all the stuff that I've been through, with the Redskin things, I've been threatened. I've gotten death threats. I mean, it's almost like a rite of passage. You get people threatening you and stuff like that. I think one time before we were speaking, we were up in Killingly, Connecticut, and my buddy and I were driving home from a school board meeting, and we got almost run off the road by some, I guess, people who didn't quite like what I said at the school board meeting.
Wow.
And so they were playing this cat and mouse game with us for a number of miles, and we were in a speed of excess of 100 and some miles an hour. I won't say for sure. I don't want to incriminate myself.
Could occur. I can neither verify or
It can neither confirm nor deny.
That's it.
But yeah, and so things don't really get under my skin so easily. I've served in combat zones and stuff like that around the world, so things don't really get under my skin that easily. But when usually when you come home, and this is home. This is the United States of America is my home. So you're supposed to feel some sense of security,
right?
And that sense of security has been greatly eroded over the last several administrations, especially during the pandemic. I think that was the biggest chunk of erosion that I've seen, because I don't know. It's like it's almost like you feel they have you under their thumb, right? Because with after 9/11, you had the Patriot Act and all that, everything that was passed, all that invasion of our privacy. People were willing to give up their privacy because of what happened at 9/11 and all the fear that was surrounded behind 9/11. And they're like, oh no, they're going to come to get us. All these the jihadists and blah blah blah. They use that fear to get Americans to sign off on infringing on our Fourth Amendment rights and so forth and so on,
right?
Using the Patriot Act and something, monitoring our phone calls, and now we're we talk about Big Brother. We're live in a surveillance state, because everything is listening to us, and now
it's not to interrupt you, but when you talk about surveillance state, I mean, did you see the article back? This is months ago. I did a quick podcast on it. I mean, the United States Post Office has been drafted into this whole idea of a surveillance state. The ICOP program, where they basically are monitoring social media. This is the post office, to be able to report back to different entities within our government if they hear any suspicious talk or anything that could be labeled as domestic terrorists. And honestly,
we're on that list now.
oh, definitely, yeah, we are on the list. I kind of figured I was, but if the question was posed a while ago, and it makes sense after these last 3 or 4 years, like you talked about, if you were looking to degrade every single common pillar that American society considered, when you're thinking about stability and comfort and belief in certain systems and groups and law enforcement, if you look at all that's been done over the last few years, if you are looking for a way to destroy a nation from within, how would you do it differently?
You wouldn't. And like I said, we've, without going into too much detail or whatever, but the United States and our allies around the world have been involved in and similar psychological operations on other countries that we want to soften up before we invade, or before something goes down. I see a lot of that here. I see a lot of what's happening, and not just everything, like you said, everything that we hold near and dear to us from our religion, because now being a Christian is you're right around up there being like a jihadist, basically, if you're a Christian nowadays.
Right.
I was reading a post, and it really bothered me to my core. I was reading a post, and it says name a profession that you feel gets paid too much. And I would say, like, one after the other, everybody was talking about, pastors and churches and this. And I'm like, you can't think of like football players, basketball. I mean, like all these other lawyers, all these other people who are literally just taking money, or whatever, and not really doing anything, in trying to give back to their community or anything like that, but everybody's listing out because they've demonized churches,
right,
as yeah, and I get it, because there are some mega churches out there that pastors out there that have literally given everybody a bad name, but you can't just take everybody and group them all into the same basket of deplorables, as Clinton said, right?
Right.
But I think that is, you have people now doubting the word of God. You got people doubting their police. You got people doubting our Supreme Court. I mean, look at the damage that the Democratic Party has done to the Supreme Court in the last few months, when we had several rulings out of the Supreme Court, for the Second Amendment, and also for Roe versus Wade and all that kind of stuff. And how you have governors and senators and representatives talking about, we're going to defy the Supreme Court. I mean, this type of talk is tyrannical,
right,
and no one's really pointing that out.
right.
If they want to talk about fascism or whatever, I mean, come on, isn't that what it is? When these people believe that they're above the people,
Right.
they believe that they're above the Supreme Court, because we have a 3-branch system where it's checks and balances. Each branch of the government has equal and equal and separate powers, right?
Right.
So the executive branch is to enforce the laws. The legislative branch is to create the laws, and the Supreme Court is supposed to interpret the laws, right? And so that one is not above the other, and that's the way it was supposed to be. But it was also supposed to be for the people, so the people are supposed to be up here. But then the way the rhetoric that you hear from Joe Biden talking about unleashing F-15s on the U.S. population and everything like that,
right,
makes me feel like he believes that he's above us.
Yeah.
That the government is above the people, and that is couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I'll say this. I know we're going pretty long here, but
yeah. At some point we'll wrap it up. But yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned January 6th again, and I think this is very pertinent, because there was a comparison made between January 6th and the BLM protest, and everybody's like, oh well, some people believe, it's one of the same. People, there was peaceful people, and the people got out of hand, and there was some outside agitators and this and the other, which I do believe. I do believe that in some of the Black Lives Matter protests, there were outside agitators that came in to stir up trouble, to
Right.
create violence. And I believe that happened in January 6th as well. But there was two major differences, or a major difference, actually, one major difference between the Black Lives Matter protest and the January 6th. Now, they want to label the January 6th protester as domestic terrorist. But if you look at the definition of what a domestic terrorist or a terrorist is, it's someone who has a political agenda, and it targets the civilian population to try to achieve that political agenda. Now, you can look at you know, you can look at it for yourself. Black Lives Matter burnt down cities, targeted private businesses. Um, you know, you know, dozens of people were killed, not government officials or whatever. Dozens of people were killed.
Right.
They did, you know, I don't know how many countless cops had been killed as a result of these like ambush type assaults on cops and stuff like that since the whole, you know, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, you know, protests and everything like that. But then January 6th, the people were protesting the government. They were protesting the government. And even the people who got out of hand and went into the Capitol and did some damage or whatever like that, it was an attack on the government, not the civilian population.
Right.
And in the Declaration of Independence, it says here, this is, you know, it says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among consent of the governed. Okay, the people, right?
Right.
That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it,
Right.
and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So basically, it is the right of the people to, you know, and not condoning the violence in January 6th, but to protest against the government, to air grievances against the government. That is our right, absolute right. It is, you know, as declared here in our Declaration of Independence. And then if the government decides that they don't want to listen, they want to feel like they're above us or whatever like that, it is our right and in our duty in so many to then abolish said government.
Right.
And then we have to institute a new government on the principles of, you know, the Constitution and you know, the things, you know, basically to reset the government or whatever if need be, and that is our right to do so. So that's the big stark difference between Black Lives Matter protests and January 6th protests.
Yeah. Well, and the whole idea too is that in order to institute the framework and the government that we had, our founders spent an awful lot of time piecing the framework of that together. And the idea and the understanding was that, okay, we're putting all of this in place, and we're handing over to you, public servants, a portion of our rights, a portion, entrusting you to go to Washington and to do the right thing to represent the people. Doesn't matter if you're the president, if you're in the House and Senate, if we're talking about local government, you know, at your state house, all of these people, you know, or enough of them to the point where it's become obvious, have forgotten the fact that they are in fact public servants and they are there for you. You know, you see obviously evidence of them aggrandizing themselves, making, you know, walking into office with this amount of money, and by the time they leave, you know, they've made millions, you know, so that it tells me that obviously they weren't necessarily there for all the right reasons. And the way they talk and the way they speak to us, and it's been even more so that I've noticed over the last couple of years, it's very evident that yes, they in fact believe that all of us, we are the plebes, and they are the elite, they are the oligarchs, and you know, if they get their way, you know, if they're allowed to continue on this path, you know, and being helped by, you know, the World Economic Forum and that whole agenda 21 and the UN and all of that, the whole world agenda, we will be reduced to what it originally started out as back in the founding of this country. Basically, the haves and the have-nots, the elites and the serfs, and it seems to me that that's the direction that They're trying to drive us. It's basically why you're seeing prices of everything going up, and they're really not doing a whole heck of a lot to curb that or change that direction, because if they can impoverish all of us, by 2030 you will own nothing, but you'll be happy. Well, how do you do that in a Western civilization that has built itself on the ability to start from nothing and then achieve and actually own things, and feel some good, some pride, some accomplishment there, when you've got a whole society built on that in the free market system, and then the intention is to flip that back to the script from whence we started. How do you achieve those things? Well, like I said, over the last few years, it seems to me, and it's going to be hard for anybody else to convince me otherwise, that's the direction we're being pushed.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's not even so much, it's just hard to deny it. I can see it for myself. It's not even, and anybody, I don't understand how anybody cannot see for themselves just the tone and the rhetoric, the way that they speak about us and speak at us,
right?
Makes me understand and realize what they feel their position is. They call themselves our leaders, wherein they're supposed to be our servants.
Right.
We're supposed to be, they're supposed to be, the government's supposed to be for the people, by the people, for the people, and not the other way around. We're not supposed to be there just to pay taxes,
right,
and give them money. And so, because otherwise, it's like you said, it's the same thing that the Declaration of Independence was written to separate from in the first place.
Right.
There's another. I think if you haven't, if those who are listening who have not read the Declaration should read it. It's a very interesting document. It kind of gives you an idea of where the mindset of people at the time were.
Right.
And so it says, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So people, they see these bad things happening and stuff like that, but they've been so accustomed to it that they're just, they're just kind of like, caught in the matrix, if you will.
Sure.
That they, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of people literally, like they'll say, I've heard this. How many times have you heard this? It's like, well, the government wants to spy on us because, they want to, stop terrorism or whatever like that. Oh, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't have anything to hide. Let them look and spy on me if they want. But if that's your norm, then all you're doing is inviting a police state.
Exactly.
Most people don't realize that, for example, if you're, as a photographer, I get, approached by police officers. People call the cops on me all the time for taking pictures for whatever reason. I guess it's also listed as a terrorist activity, so I'm on that list too.
Of course.
But if the cops walk up to you and say, show me your ID, you don't have to show them your ID unless you are being suspected of a crime. If you're being detained, and you can only be detained if you're suspected of a crime. If they say, well, there was a burglary over here, I'm going to detain you because I'm suspecting that you may have something to do with that, I need to see your ID. Then, in that case, you are then obligated to cooperate with the, with law enforcement, showing them your ID, or they can cite you for not showing them an ID. But if you, in most states, if you are just walking down the street, New York used to have this law called the stop and frisk law,
yes.
Right?
Rudy Giuliani days.
Yeah, New York City. They declared that unconstitutional because it violated the Fourth Amendment. So now there's got to be a reasonable suspicion. There's got to be, if the person is being detained, it's got to be like a crime. Let's say, oh, well, there was, you fit the description of So so they, I mean, the cops can make up whatever they want to at this point, but
Sure.
most people don't realize that their their um their their rights. And I've been guilty of this myself. And the cops walk up to me and say, "Hey, what are you out here doing?" I'm taking a picture. While let me see some ID. And I don't have anything to hide. When I pull out my ID and show it to them, whatever, all that does is further erode the rights of other citizens. When I participate, or when I don't exercise that right, then that right tends to disappear.
Right.
Because if I'm having 100 people and 90 of them just freely give their ID over, or even I don't have anything to hide. Here's my ID or whatever. It may seem trivial, but then those 10 people who refuse are then the minority, and they're gonna, even though they're exercising their right just like you. I mean, I have a right to show them my ID if I want to, right?
Right.
Even though they're exercising their right, they're gonna be harassed, and they're gonna, But if 100% of us, or at least the majority of us stick together and say, no, there are laws, there's a constitution, we need to hold these people, not just our law enforcement officers or whatever like that, hold them accountable, but also our politicians, especially our politicians,
Right.
because they take an oath to support and defend the U.S. Constitution, and there are laws on the books that if they do not abide by that oath, then they can be removed from office and put in jail for it.
Right.
I mean, there are consequences, but we're we're allowing them to get away with violating their oath of office if they're attacking the Second Amendment. I don't care where you fit in the whole grand scheme of do you believe in guns, or you're a gun owner or anything like that. I don't care where you fit in that. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. The fact is, the U.S. Constitution is nonpartisan. It is what it is. These are the laws that the government is supposed to govern by. And if they are in violation of those laws, like if we're in violation of a law, we get in trouble.
Right.
So we hold them as accountable for the laws that they're violating. And it's, as far as the way that the Second Amendment is written, I don't care how many school shootings there are. I don't care how many mass shootings that they claim to be, if there's 450 or 125. I don't care. It has not, one thing has nothing to do with the other. The Second Amendment was not is explicit and says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Period.
Right.
So you can't then say, well, look, we're going to infringe on your rights, and if you get mad about it, we're going to put our F-15s on you. And so there, you can't go and do that, because that, again, is a violation. You're not supporting or defending the U.S. Constitution. You're eroding, you're infringing on it. You are going against the U.S. Constitution. And what does it say right here in the Declaration of Independence?
Oh, I thought you were quoting all of that from memory, Mark.
What's that?
Do you have a copy of the Declaration in front of you?
I do. I was reading the. I had read it before, and I knew what I was looking for. So it's in the.
And not to disrupt you, you were on a very very good roll there, but I wanted to inject just a little bit of levity there. I was going to comment afterwards about your amazing ability of recall, and then come to find out you might have a cheat sheet in case you needed to use it. But I mean, that's fine.
No, I couldn't remember the exact words. I do have the preamble memorized though.
That's awesome. That's very good.
Yeah, no. When I was in the Boy Scouts, it was one of the things that we had to look more into, and I was very interested when I was a kid in the Revolutionary War, and the Declaration of Independence and things like that, because the Native Americans, of course, the American Indians are greatly responsible for the formation of this country, and though we don't get much credit for it, there has been no war that the United States that has fought and won that Native Americans weren't there to help. And so, in getting in achieving our independence, Native Americans obviously helped, and it's also establishing our government in using in the Constitution, the great laws of peace are heavily, dare I say, heavily influence the U.S. Constitution in terms of the three branches of government. Just everything.
Yeah.
The Native Americans had a system that was proven over hundreds of years or whatever, and was highly influential. So like I said, it's near and dear to me on several levels, as an American first, but also as a Native American as well. I think that it's important that we know, because we can't be like Biden and say, we hold these truths, the thing. We can't be like that. You got to actually know the thing, because if you know the thing, if you do know it, you're empowered, because you know your rights, and even if we don't have F-15s, I guarantee you, I served in the Navy, and we had F-14s at the time. I served in the Navy, and I know pilots and stuff like that. I can promise you, you would be hard pressed to find any American pilot who took an oath of office, or took oath of service, to then fire missiles on an American population, American city.
Right.
It's unfathomable, and I guarantee you, they will faster quit than to turn an F-15 on the American population.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden is if he.
Well,
if he
I
decides,
think what he was trying to suggest is the idea, or the the premise that we have the right to keep and bear arms and to deal with the tyrannical government, that because the government has all these larger implements of war, that it would be it's a futile argument in his opinion. Not that he intends on using those weapons on the public, although who knows what the future holds. I would like to think that would not be the case, but I think he was attempting to say that that idea, or that premise, that we could actually fight back against a tyrannical government is a futile and ridiculous argument, which I don't agree with. And the other thing, like you said, if you don't have one of these, and if you can't really see that is a pocket constitution and a Declaration of Independence. If you don't own one of these, you really should. And you can say it's old timey, it's kind of folksy or whatever to think that you would have a copy of that and maybe read it and understand it. But like Mark suggested, there's several occasions, and I it's sad to think about. I think there's going to be several occasions in the future that it would behoove you to know your rights and be able to at least stand for them, regardless of what the outcome may be. At least you know when you're standing on firm ground, and continue to do so. So I don't know how you feel as far as what we've covered tonight, Mark. We were into this about an hour and a half, so I'm thinking maybe that we could do this again, but maybe we think about wrapping things up. But
I agree. I agree that we have enough to to go. I mean, don't get me started, man. I'm heated right now. It's like I'm on that plane, man. You gotta, I gotta come down off of that.
No, and that's fine. You know what? People will tune in and hopefully take the time to listen to this. This is being, but the problem that you run into, and I'm praying more and more individuals as they start to follow this podcast more on a regular basis, and I'm talking directly to all of you, that you would understand that, part of the topics and the things that we bring up, the reason that we bring them up is because of the importance and what we see as violations and infringements upon things that, we took for granted for a very long time, and we're seeing the erosion, the effect of that happen right now. But unfortunately, also the American public's attention span, unless your name is Joe Rogan or somebody of that stature, they tend to shy away from these longer videos. And what my prayer and my hope is that you will tune in, you will listen, you will hang in there for just a period of time so that you can understand that the content and the intent of what we're trying to do is actually important. It's worth listening to, and we're not just trying to chew up time or throw some frivolous content up there just for the sake of posting on websites and getting attention. There's a lot more behind what it is that Mark and I are trying to do, or even Mark by himself or myself that are trying to do beyond just take up your time. So I'm praying that your attention spans will start to lengthen if you consider the content here. So
I agree with that. I want to say this one thing. I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to say this one thing when we were mentioning about Joe Biden and talking about how futile it would be, for to use the Second Amendment against F-15s and all that kind of stuff. It's not something he said to the Ukrainians. When you had the Russians invading Ukraine,
right,
you have a superior force who had MiGs and the Ukrainians couldn't even muster together any
real Air Force,
Air Force. They established a no-fly zone. They took control over half of their country and everything like that. But we sent AK-47 ammunition to them. They issued AK-47s to their population, or whatever. We never at one point said, "Hey, look, just give up because the Russians got MiGs and you guys don't even have pilots, so just give up." Never once was that ever even uttered. Now we've sent billions and billions and trillions of dollars.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my next comment. That we've actually sent a ton of money in their direction. So if he really didn't believe that the idea of being able to stand up against a tyrannical government, wasn't a good reason for the initial Second Amendment in this country, why would you bother to support Ukraine and what they're doing over there, and then they throw billions of dollars because they're throwing billions of our dollars, as opposed to he's not digging into his own pockets for this. But I think you get both Mark and my point at this with this.
Right. So. Right. No, absolutely. And the other thing I want to say before we end is that if we do nothing here but provoke thought, I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care what your thoughts are on, if you think that I'm right or whatever. That's not what my whole point of any of these conversations or anything that I when I go live on Facebook or whatever. My whole point is not necessarily to garner or to get people to agree with me or to to get support in everybody. Because I can speak in an echo chamber and I can get plenty of high fives and stuff like that. The same. I'm sure you're the same way, Gary. But if we can provoke thought, because I think people have forgotten how to think,
right?
Think for themselves, and they wait for the news media to tell them how to interpret a situation or whatever. If nothing else, just think about those things. It's like think about what these steps. I mean, this is a chess game. This is not, it's not checkers here. These are subtle moves that we're seeing, that we're watching. And like I said, anytime anytime they want to get something done, then the media steps in, and just like with COVID, and dare I say the C word, but just like with that, they want to get something done. The media steps in, and then it's like it bombards us every single solitary day on this particular subject. And so now to us, it's the only thing that ever exists because it's always seen. And so then suddenly when they got what they want or whatever, then it goes away. And then, and now it's the next thing. So, over the last few months, whatever, they had these, the January 6th hearings or whatever, the little parade show or whatever. They want to feed that into you. Why? Because of this election season.
Right.
So it's not so much, they all do it. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans, they throw shade at each other and they do all all that kind of stuff. But try to identify their manipulation, and therefore you are able to be when you're aware of it, you don't get pulled in by it. And that's what, if you've ever noticed any of my posts that I do on Facebook or anything like that, that's always been my theme, is try, just question the narrative so that you don't get sucked into it.
Yeah.
And just try to free more people from the matrix.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't suggest to people, after watching this podcast, if you're not familiar with Mark, and you may not be, go to Facebook, look up Mark OneWolf, and he on a regular basis will do his driving commentary and I got the idea kind of from him too, or maybe the courage to try it in that respect, when I've been doing my local pump the brakes little 20-minute segments between my drive to work. Mark is always covering a bunch of different topics and things of the day, things that are basically, like I said, that like what we're discussing here, that basically are infringing on your abilities and freedoms. And a lot of times I'll get questioned because my Facebook page in this podcast is called Restoring Main Street. Well, how does this conversation between Mark and I relate to restoring Main Street? Well, initially it was, like I said, it was my idyllic idea of, my childhood and what downtown looked like, and the hustle and bustle and just the commerce and the calm and the safety that you felt. I'm missing that. You're not seeing that today in a lot of society. So honestly, I started out with that perspective, but now instead of really restoring Main Street, I think for the time being, until this changes, we got to think about preserving Main Street and our abilities to function and be free and start a business. Like I said, Mark's a businessman on his own. He's got his own small business, photography, and is branching off into other things. But those are the ideals and the things that I'm trying to help preserve. And then maybe we can get back to actually restoring Main Street, filling those storefronts that have, become vacant because of, whatever reason. But, it all works to serve the same thing. And it's basically to bolster society, small towns, your communities, get people to think more locally, get more active. The reason we're in the position that we are right now with a lot of what's going on in this country is because we've trusted too much, and we haven't done a whole lot of verifying. We stopped keeping an eye on these institutions and trusted them way too much, especially government. And we just need to get back to standing up for what this country was founded under, and the things that we actually believe in. So, Mark, I want to thank you for taking some time. And like I said, we've put in a little bit. We're not quite Joe Rogan 3-hour status, but we're approaching an hour and 45 minutes. So that's pretty darn good. But hopefully in the future, like I said, I'm looking to bring Mark back on and discuss other things. I would certainly like to get your perspective as being a small business owner at some point, and talk about some of those difficulties too. But that's because I only think it can be beneficial, as far as your opinions and ideas about that thing. So those are ideas for future podcasts. And like I said, I really like to thank you for taking the time. So
yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, it's the more that we can get the word out, the more that we can get people to to remember. I know some people are younger people, maybe they don't have our history, the benefit that we saw things this way, and we see the deterioration and destruction of our society, wherein some people have just grown up in this, and this is just the norm to them.
right.
So we have to hopefully we can inspire other people to get on their podcasts and get on their Facebook lives and do like I said, the car, we call the driver's seat commentary, or whatever
Exactly.
you want to call it. Just to, like I said, whatever's on your mind, just get it out there, and you find that what I have found anyway in my endeavors is that find people like yourself who are like-minded, and thinking the same thing, and then it's like, oh, there's a whole bunch of us think alike here.
Yeah.
Then what can we do? Put our heads together and try to get get things done before it becomes a whole, like, AR-15 versus an F-15 situation.
Right.
Let's try to handle that before that even gets that.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating or suggesting or even trying to promote civil war. I'm trying to
No.
prevent that.
Right.
Where in in what you're saying is, it's almost as if our so-called leadership is pushing us towards that,
Trying to antagonize us. Yes.
trying to antagonize that. And so that's what we're trying to to bring into light and say, hey, look, watch out for this and don't fall for the okey doke.
Exactly. And you know what? And if you're not, if you're not looking to do something similar to what it is that you see here with Mark and I, at least in your local community and wherever possible, and with this podcast, and even with what Mark does with his Facebook Lives, if you search him out, follow, subscribe, share, hit the notifications button, write reviews, depending on what platform you're seeing any of this on. Even if you're not going to do what it is that we try and do, find those people and those groups, associations, whether it be here, but even more so locally in your area, that you can reach out and actually support, so that you're taking an active role in, go to school board meetings, run for town office. There are plenty of people across the country that you're seeing finally stand up and do some of these things that they never thought that they would do, that they are actually, have found it within themselves, that patriotic spirit that says, okay, I'm no longer going to sit on the sidelines. We're not going to sit back and just let this happen, watch our country be destroyed. Let's take an active role in some respect. And if that just means supporting Mark and I and other individuals in your community, please do that as well. So I think that's all I got. I think that's all that, like I said, Mark could go on for quite some time, and so could I actually.
We get us going back and forth.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster that just doesn't end. But anyway, like I said, Mark, I'd just like to thank you again. I won't torture you any longer. Give you back part of your evening, and you can think about the next thing that maybe we want to discuss, and we'll get into. But I think you can look forward to having Mark and I go back and forth again very soon. So again, thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it.
All right, I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, same to you, my friend. I'm going to let Mark go so that he doesn't have to, I don't have to torture him much longer. So adios, my friend. Cutting you loose.
All right, take care.
All right. And so anyway, let's shift. I'll go to the webcam here. You haven't had the tight look all night because we've been doing things a little bit differently than the norm. But I want to, like I said, thank Mark OneWolf again for coming on the program and discussing, like I said, just some general topics and things that are happening right now that really need our attention. And I'm just hoping that you got something seriously, some substance out of that, some things to look into yourself. And I know you have opinions, so please reach out, share your opinions, comment, share this podcast with friends, family. And like, subscribe, hit the notification button. All of those things help tickle the algorithm. So depending on what your platform you're on, if you go on and you follow us, click the follow button. Follow me on Rumble, on GabTV, on BitCHUTE. I will post to YouTube, but like I said, I'm trying to actually migrate away from YouTube and get to those platforms that actually support free speech and don't hinder what it is that you want to discuss, any of the topics. That was the basis of this country. And part of what we've lost is the ability to be able to discuss and have different opinions and not try to vilify each other. The idea is, in the end, with free speech, that you pray that the best ideas are the ones that rise to the surface. And that's the intent. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to do here. And like I said, Mark is doing the same thing. Look Mark up on Facebook. Like I said, Mark OneWolf. And He does a little ride-along commentary, kind of like you said, like my Pump the Brakes that I've been doing lately on Facebook. So look him up, listen to him, see what you think, comment. That's how all of this continues and grows. And I am trying to grow a following, so I would appreciate it if you would do that. We appreciate it greatly. Let me do this really quickly. I want to thank my friend Gene Vallee, who is always supporting this podcast. If you're a local and you go to Facebook, go to Coffee News Rochester, and it will give you all of the local happenings, anything that's relevant in the Rochester area, and even some of the surrounding areas. You will see that pop up on Coffee News Rochester, and that's my friend Gene Vallee, and I really appreciate his support and all that he does in the name of this podcast. And also, I'd like to mention my friends at metalheadsrock.com. If you're into heavy metal and you want to wear the attire, go to their website, metalheadsrock.com, and you can find any and everything you could possibly think of related to the heavy metal band that you find that you're banging your head for. So go check them out. They're a great bunch of people. They have relocated themselves to Lafayette Road. Right now, I am going to have to look up that address because I forget exactly where the actual shop is, but they are out in the Portsmouth area on Lafayette Road. So go check out their new shop. From what I've seen from videos, it's an amazing looking place, and they are just great people. So please support my friends at Metalheads and metalheadsrock.com. So what can I say? It has been a long, lengthy one tonight. I thank all of you, any of you that have hung in there for this whole thing, and I do appreciate it. Again, like I said, I would really appreciate your support. Share, like, subscribe, hit the notifications button, all those things. I'm just trying to help spread the word, and the more of you that help spread the word, the better off we'll be. And honestly, the larger audience that I get, the other thing that I would like to try and do is start to do live reads for local businesses, because we really, Restoring Main Street started out as the idea to help support local small business. And, the way that you can do that is by doing live read commercials for different businesses like I do for Metalheads. And I'd like to be able to expand that and do that more frequently. Metalheads I do out of like I said, they're just a great group of people, so I share them. But I would like to include other people on the podcast, other small businesses that I could support and promote. And so if we grow the following here on Restoring Main Street, the more followers we get, the more businesses that would be inclined to want to advertise with us and have live reads. So that's a part of a goal I'm trying to reaching out to do as well, because like I said, I want to support the community along with discussing things that I think are relevant to bringing back that idyllic image that I have in my head of restoring Main Street. But like I said, right now we kind of have to just let's work at preserving Main Street first, I guess. So in light of all that, what I'd like to do, I guess, is what I always do at this point at the end of the program is remind you of a few things, and that's the idea of God, freedom, and family. Because if we lose the first two, if we lose our faith in God and we lose our freedom, our families are truly doomed. So, again, thank you for listening, and until next time, God bless.